Hey man, it's Phil X, and you're watching Guitar Tales with Dave Cohen. And Guitar Tales, guitar tales. Like, what else do you need, right? Guitar. We're geeks, nerds, gear, inspirations, positive vibes. Look out.
What a great show we have lined up tonight. And again, as I always like to say, thank you, Phil X, for being a friend of the show. He is a two-timer. We could eventually do like the SNL thing for people who've been on the show multiple times. He's part of the two-timers club. Before I introduce our amazing guest with whom we were already chatting in the virtual green room, let's thank our sponsor, Confections of a Rock Star. Check this out. And we start with the burger, by the way. Little Andy's Burgers are inside, which are delicious. Look at that, some girl. No, that's Tattoo You. Sorry, that's the Tattoo You cover. Go there in Asbury Park. I'm telling you, this place is fantastic. Bring your pooch. Here we go. There you go. Pupcakes are meant for dogs to eat. It's that good. Check it out. It's really wonderful, and it's owned by real rock musicians. But as important as Confections is, our guest tonight is absolutely amazing. And I have to tell you, I'm a lawyer. Look, I have to print stuff up now and then. But the Who's Who is so much longer than the Who's Not in this case. All right. Who has he played with? A guy named Bob Dylan, Billy Idol, Joan Jett, Billy Squier, Foghat, a guy named Sammy Hagar you might have heard of, Neil Schon, Michael Shreve, Brian Setzer, who I think was sick, and I think he's getting better right now. I heard about that. Mick Taylor, Dave Edmonds, Graham Parker, Hall and Oates, Edgar Winter, I just saw. Leslie Westband, Rick Derringer, Carmen Apiece. He has auditioned for the Rolling Stones, and he's open for Led Zeppelin. He did a recording with George Harrison, and in 2011 supported the New York Dolls, which our fellow guest Steve Conti played with for many years. So Kenny Aaronson and Scott, the erstwhile publicist extraordinaire and co-host of Guitar Tales, why don't you guys come in here?
Good evening. Let's put Kenny in the big box.
Hey, how are you guys,
Let's
man?
do that. Let's put Kenny in the big box. The winner's circle. There he is.
Look at that.
Where are you coming to us from tonight, Kenny?
I live in Wayne, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
And down in my basement and my music room and there's some guitars and
gotta have one of those.
Wait, and then I've got my upright bass and my steel guitar.
Oh, slap
and my 50s stuff and there you go. It's like
I love it.
It's my world down here. And my puppy likes to come down and hang out on the couch sometimes with me. So yeah.
I closed my two guys out in the doorway there. They're very upset with me. I left them home all day for a good 7 hours. So
my left hand is petting my pooch right now, and if I stop, he'll start barking.
So as a musician, I'm home a lot because I'm either working on the weekends or I'm on the road or I'm just home. Trying to figure out what to do with myself. And so I spend a lot of time with my dog, and she's used to having me around, and I love her very much, and we're good buds, and she's always around me.
Do you find my dogs don't necessarily care about loud noises, even if I'm playing drums and stuff?
No, she just sleeps through it.
Doesn't care, right? Isn't that weird?
Doesn't care.
Yeah, my guy's the same.
But if my girlfriend starts playing clarinet, she goes
really.
No.
Yeah.
Not a fan of the clarinet, huh? Okay.
Your pooch is a rocker, straight rock, traditional rock.
I mean, she doesn't mind. She doesn't mind loud music. She doesn't mind bass. She doesn't mind me playing my steel guitars, which I'm very rough at. So it's not always pleasant to listen to, especially if you're trying to learn something. And yet it must be some frequency thing with the clarinet, because as soon as my girlfriend starts to play, and she could, she's not an improviser. She could read some music and get some notes out, but the dog, even if the dog's upstairs, she starts to go nuts. It's really funny.
That is good.
So
what
anyway,
about, how does your pooch do on 4th of July?
she's totally cool.
Same with mine. Doesn't care.
Bother. No, she's weird with other dogs.
Right.
So I'm always out. I always have to remember to bring treats with me. And I try to anticipate. Hopefully I see the dog coming in enough time to grab a treat, and I get her attention with it and make her sit, and she won't bark. But if I don't do it in time, she just starts to bark at the dog, and you kind of can't get her out of it. It's like she's in that zone.
Well, she's protecting you probably in her mind.
Yeah, and and she's not. She just wants to meet the other dog. It's not that she's vicious or anything. She's a collie.
Right.
She thinks she's human. I mean,
well, they are. They all are.
They're great. I love her. Love her so much.
Wow, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. We were talking in the green room, and the intro music. The guy playing bass on the intro music is Leonard Bernstein's nephew. And we had a nice little side chat, which I will awkwardly and artificially inject into this part of the chat now.
Yeah. So when you said that, so that brought up two things, and they're kind of connected. And people will know this. People our age will probably know it. So the first thing I was saying was my older brother, my late older brother. He was a classical musician and came up through like the classical music hierarchy in New York City. Was like the old borough orchestra, then the old city orchestra. Then
right.
Then you went to Juilliard if you were good enough. And he did all that, and he ended up in the New York Philharmonic, and he worked under Leonard Bernstein for many years.
Wow.
As part of the percussion section. But then I was saying to you that three friends of his that he went to Juilliard with were three or four guys that formed the New York Rock and Roll Ensemble, which was a band from New York that fused rock and roll and classical music. And my brother was friends with them, and they used to come over to my house. And I was telling you that the bass player borrowed my first bass before I really started getting that interested in it, where I was playing it all the time. My mother bought it for me when I was like 14, and I didn't even know what to do with it. I didn't have anybody my own age to play with, and it just kind of sat around. And so I lent it to this bass player that was in the formation of the New York Rock and Roll Ensemble until I decided that I wanted it back to start playing. And one of the guys in New York Rock and Roll Ensemble who used to come over to my house was Michael Kamen, who famous string arranger, composer, orchestrator, worked with, Eric Clapton, tons of huge people. And then one of the other guys who I believe was an oboe player, and his real name was Marty Fulterman, but he got into TV soundtrack work, and he worked under the name of Mark Snow.
Okay.
He's the guy that wrote the X-File music and a lot of soundtrack and scores for TV stuff. So
we always say that music is everywhere. I mean,
and my parents weren't musical in terms of playing an instrument. They like show tunes or some opera,
Right.
And because my brother was almost 7 years older than me, I was exposed to rock and roll at a pretty early age, because when he was a youngster, he was really into it. But he kind of just flipped and became a classical fanatic and
interesting.
Totally forsaken rock and roll and pop music. But up until that point, I had Murray the K on,
Yep.
and all the New York DJs, the good guys, WMCI good guys, and Murray the K, and then all the great AM radio, and then of course the start of FM underground radio and all of that. So the radio was always on. It was always music being played. And actually, that's where I was showing you my steel guitar before, because that's just a thing I was always interested in.
Right.
I mean, I'm a bass player, but I always loved country music and I always loved Hawaiian music. And from my parents, like in the morning, my parents would have like one of the Muzak stations on, maybe.
Oh, really?
Or and you would hear elevator music, but you'd hear like elevated music, but with steel guitar in it. And I used to always just be really attracted to Hawaiian steel guitar.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was just and I don't play very well. I just happen to have a love of it, and but I record a lot of. I'm very much into Muzak and elevated music, and trying to figure out how to do that kind of stuff on my own as one person using a computer and a lot of software and sample libraries. And because I grew up listening to classical music from my brother, I'd sort of, even, when we were young, we were in competition with each other.
Yeah.
Right.
And
as I went with my brother.
Yeah, he didn't want to hear my rock and roll and I didn't want to hear his classical music, but somehow it permeates you because you just grow up with it and it's in there. And so now I sort of am able to channel things like of that sort to when I'm trying to come up with a string arrangement for something, or, it's
a handy skill.
I may not know musically what I'm trying to do, but I hear it and I can figure it out.
Well, you're tapping into something that makes people feel good. And yourself, for that matter.
And it's a lot of fun to do. When you've been a bass player playing rock and roll your whole life, there's been a few points in my life where I needed to do something different. And I remember one point was after I was done playing with Joan Jett. So this would have been around 94 or so or something. And I was kind of burnt out from just playing eighth notes, and I was like, boy, if I had a nickel for every eighth note I play with her and Billy Idol, I'd be Elon Musk. But
better you're not, man.
But it was like one of those moments in time where I just felt like, God, I don't even want to play bass anymore. I'm just done with it. And that's when I found, sort of got into technology and synthesizers and sequencing, and put some money into buying my first, really high-end keyboard, and started to learn about it, and it just opened up a whole other thing for me to do when I'm not working. Then I could come down in my basement and, or wherever I was living at the time, go to my room dedicated to my computer and my world, and just start.
Are you basically
stuff,
Are you basically a self-taught fella?
Yeah. I studied a little bit, but I'm self-taught.
And trying to learn all that computer stuff isn't easy either. On doing that,
it's not easy. You got to talk to people. You got to, you need people to help you at times, or you just got to look for the information. Yeah. It could be really frustrating. I'm not technical in that sense. I'm a musical person, but I'm self-taught and I just kind of figure it out,
I'm self-taught.
I hear something.
I can't read a note. I beat the crap out of records and cassettes and VHS early on to try to learn how to play this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a keyboard here that I use to trigger stuff, but if I hear some kind of part, I can get around on it enough to figure out what I need, and I could put it in slowly and then speed it up if I have to. Technology is a great thing. I mean, I don't think we should rely completely on it, but it certainly helps me a lot. That's for sure. Although I still believe, like, we're at the age where I still love the old records that I grew up with, people playing together.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
not one person doing everything in the box.
Right.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
And the sound bleeding all over the place in the room.
I love old records because I love the air going on with things, you know, and people that got all these incredible recordings doing it because they knew how to use microphones, you know.
Yeah.
And that to me is something that's kind of been lost to some degree.
You know,
I love the mistakes in music. You know,
I love mistakes.
So many songs and they're just there and the mistakes are there and it gives a shit. Like, you know, in Roxanne, Sting sat on a piano and laughed and they left it in. That would never happen today. That would be immediately cut out and on the floor.
You know, funny, one time, years ago when I was still living in New York City, these Japanese karaoke producers came to New York to do karaoke sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Karaoke,
whatever.
However. And
in Brooklyn, they say karaoke, I think.
I don't know. I'm always, every time I say it, I'm always corrected by somebody. But at any rate, so these guys came over. They took over one of the big studios in Manhattan, and they were churning out karaoke sessions. And I knew a lot of people that were doing them. And eventually, I got a call to come in to do some stuff. And at the time, my mindset wasn't geared to deal with the way these people were working. But I remember one of the songs I had to do was Tie a Yellow Ribbon.
Boom, boom,
and there was a bass mistake in the original track.
Oh,
and
no, really?
They insisted you have to play the mistake, which I thought was like, oh, okay.
That's kind of cool.
Well, attention to detail, huh? For a karaoke.
Yeah. Oh,
thing?
yeah.
Wow.
They were really like, has to be like this.
When you get on a gig for like a Billy Idol gig or a Billy Squier, any Billy gig really, no.
There was a few of them.
They hand you the list of songs and how much time they give you to learn the material. On average,
I rehearsed with all those people. I mean, we did. When I started with Billy Idol, I remember the first thing that was said to me was Steve Stevens actually said to me, you have to use either this bass or this bass. And it was, for some reason, one of the basses was a Fernandez. I don't know why. And the other bass was a Spectre. And I went, well, I'll go with the Spectre. Yeah. So Stuart Spectre gave me the bass and I still have it.
Wow.
So, and the other thing was Steve wanted me to play everything downstroke. I had to play with a pick and no up and down strokes. Had to be all downstrokes.
They had a vision for the driving nature of it, I guess.
And it took me a while to get it. And until I got comfortable with it, I would sort of turn away from them and I would do like down, 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 up, down, 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 up, but eventually I got so good at it, I was ready for the Ramones after that. But,
oh, that's great.
And Joan was the same. She wanted that that real driving downstroke picking thing. Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, it serves its purpose. But between those gigs, I hadn't played with my thumb anymore, and I hadn't played any funk, and it just destroyed my funk chops.
Well, that's a segue for me. We have to talk about stories at least for a minute.
Yeah, stories.
Because you were completely funking out on that.
Well, I was old school with that because I was a James Jamerson, Chuck Rainey fan.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that was Fingers, and I had been listening a lot at that time to a record called Chuck Rainey's Coalition.
Okay.
And it was a Chuck Rainey solo record that he did there's a lot of well-known session cats on it that we all know, like Cornell Dupree and Richard T. and all these, New York cats.
Yeah,
and
studio guys.
Actually, it was sort of like an early version of Stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I always refer to it as sort of pre-stuff. And it's got those kind of grooves on it too. so I wore out a couple of vinyl copies of that record, and I still, I try to turn people onto it because Chuck was just a super player. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
But this was, Chuck has gone through transitions in his career and he's changed. But so this was old school Chuck. You
Right.
know.
Okay.
He wasn't popping the strings as much back then, I don't think.
Wasn't popping. He was playing with one finger back and forth.
Yeah.
Like double thumping, but with the index finger.
Okay. Yeah.
And then before that, you can hear Chuck playing with King Curtis, where he plays some really cool stuff. I mean, Chuck's the guy, man. I love Chuck. But and then of course I grew up on Motown records. So I was just when we did Brother Louie, which another backstory to that was Stories. We did that not as Stories. We did that as session players for another band. On Buddha Kama Sutra. There was a band called Exuma.
Okay.
They were from the Caribbean. Neil Bogart, the president of Kama Sutra, Buddha Kama Sutra, he wanted to do a more modern kind of record with them. And he hired Kenny Kerner and Richie Wise. That was with Dust. I started out with Dust with those two guys. They ended up producing this record and they didn't know who to hire. So they hired Stories because we all knew each other from the label.
Right. Makes sense.
And I had gone from Dust. Dust broke up. They moved me into Stories. We had the same manager. Stories was going through a transitional period. I became the new bass player. We ended up cutting Brother Louie as session players. And then when Ian Lloyd put his vocal on it, Neil Bogart said, wow, fuck Exuma. This is going to be the next
that
Stories
single. Incredible.
Yeah.
First take.
Really?
One take. It was just for the other guy to learn the track.
Really?
Yeah, from the other band,
And you hit number 1, Billboard and the planet Earth, basically.
Yeah.
So how did that feel? I mean, so you're talking all casually about it. Scott and I are sitting here chatting with a guy who had the number 1 song on the fucking planet, at least in the world of rock.
It's really, you know why? It's really a great record. It's very much of that time.
Yep.
Short, to the point, strong hook, strong chorus, great string section solo in it.
Yeah.
Where it plays off the guitar. I mean, it had everything in it that you could want and a great vocal.
In there.
The only thing was that in 1973,
right,
because of the lyrical content,
yep,
the song got banned from radio in some southern states like Alabama and Mississippi.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Because it's about a black and a white person together in one relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess once they figured out, I mean, I'm a little kid listening to it. I just knew I liked the song listening on AM radio in my parents' car.
It's great record.
You know what I thought when I first said, how did Rod Stewart's voice get so good all of a sudden?
Yeah, people used to always, was that Rod Stewart on that?
But his register was much higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is higher.
With more control, I think.
More control, and he was nailing the notes and everything.
Ian and I are still friends, and I haven't seen him in a while, but up until a few years ago when I would still come into New York City every so often, there have been times when we got together where he was playing somewhere and I would get up and do Brother Louie with him and he sang it just like he did back in the day.
Really?
He still has that voice, huh?
Still had the voice, still hit all the notes, in tune, no cracking, no nothing. It was just like, it was great.
That's insane.
Didn't have to lower the key, or anything like some people have to do.
That's amazing.
It was great. Yeah, we're still in touch. Ian's still around. He's all right. Brian, the drummer, passed away a few years ago, and I don't know where the other guys are at really.
That's that journey. I mean, like you've had. I read it at the outset of the show. You've had incredible success before and since, but sitting here as an observer, I just can't get over, like that you had a song that big that we all know, we all love, So in terms of the live performances of it, I saw it wasn't Bandstand. There's something
There was Midnight Special.
Midnight Special. That's what I
There
just
was
watched.
Don Kirshner's
rock concert.
Rock concert. There was In Concert.
Right.
And there was Bandstand. Yeah, I remember doing Bandstand and meeting Mr. Dick Clark. That was cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And he was in LA in those days, or he was still in Philly?
That was LA.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That is truly amazing stuff. And now you were already very well established by then, but what did that do to your career?
Actually, I wasn't well established at all, because that was only the second band in my career.
Oh, right after your own band.
After Dust. Which did, by the way, we still owe royalty. We still owe money on our advances from 1970.
Kenny, shush! Don't bring that up.
I'll represent you. I'll represent you.
You know,
I'm a lawyer.
For an album that has a cult following, that my reputation actually starts from, and I still kind of, get props for it. People always say to me, Dust, it's always Dust. Dust is the first thing pretty much out of any musician fan of mine. It's amazing how we still haven't paid back our advances. It hasn't.
That is very funny.
Never sold enough. And Sony, the Sony Legacy label, bought out the Buddha Kama Sutra catalog and remastered it and put it out.
In 98, right?
Yeah, something like that. And it still didn't do anything. Because I remember Mark Bell, Marky Ramone, and I, we went to the mastering sessions together. and
now my working assumption, I'll expose my ignorance. I'm assuming Marky Ramone is one of the Ramones.
Yeah.
Just
I'm
an idiot. I'll admit it.
Not an original.
No.
Okay.
But he's inherited the legacy because the rest of the guys are dead.
Yeah, they passed. Yeah. Yeah.
So Mark has his Marky Ramone's Blitzkrieg show, which is all a Ramone show.
Oh, I love that.
And he's got a great band. They're really cool guys. I really like them. If they're ever in my area, I always go see them because I like to hang out with Mark, catch up. The guys in the band are like from South America and Italy. They're really cool guys.
Oh, that is cool.
And they sound great. And they do like 70 songs in an hour.
Right, yeah.
Like,
the oldest songs.
Boom, boom, boom. It's like,
no 3-minute songs on this show.
What's that thing? That's great.
But, I remember from the, that Wall of Sound when Spectre did,
yes. Rock and Roll High School?
That's what I think. No. Do you, it's not Rock and Roll High School.
I can't remember now.
Me neither. The first song that came to my head was Rock and Roll High School, but that's not the one with the Phil Spector Wall of Sound. I could hear the song in my head, but I can't.
Come on, get on your computers there.
All right,
Google it. No, you know what? I'm a big Phil Spector fan, so I'm a huge fan of Phil Spector records. I can listen to them all day long.
He took, like you said, just the downbeat, simple guitar work, and he created a special sound for them. Like I'll periodically listen. Oh, you're cheating right now. I could see it. Are you
Who, me? Oh no, I'm not. I'm
going to cheat, and we'll make Kenny look like a genius. He just.
I'm thinking. You know what I have here on my computer is I have an impulse response, like a sonic snapshot.
Okay.
Of the Gold Star echo chamber.
Oh,
and
really?
I can use that on my computer and put stuff through it. And when I put strings through it, it sounds exactly like a Phil Spector record.
Interesting. End of the century. I can't take credit for
End of the century. Thank you.
Wikipedia told me.
Mark told me some crazy stories about Phil being in the studio. He was a little nuts.
Yeah.
I think a gun came out on a few occasions.
He loves the gun.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a love gun either. It was like a real gun.
But I'm fascinated because Mark got to hang out with him, and I've never met him, and I don't know if I'd want to, but I love his production so much. I mean, even, when he worked with George Harrison, I mean, I just love his concept of the wall of sound and his, but they always, of course, used great musicians. He used the best people that were available,
Well, that's sort of that formula. Like, I'm immediately thinking of the Sex Pistols, and a band who should have shitty musicians based on the vibe that they're trying to create, but they don't. There's real,
listen, when that first Sex Pistols record came out, I mean, I'm not a big punk rocker or anything, but that man kicked ass.
Yeah.
It kicked ass.
It did.
And I remember the first time I saw the Ramones, I was in this unknown progressive rock group that I was with in New York City for a short time. One of the guys in the band, the keyboard player, was Al Greenwood, who later I hooked up with Mick Jones and was in Foreigner. But we had this band, and we played some show outside of New York City, and the Ramones were on it. And I remember watching the Ramones. I think we went on first, and the Ramones came on second, and then there was a headliner. And we watched like people throwing beer cans and shit at the Ramones. This was really early on, and people didn't like them, at least not in this town. But then again, I saw the first time Led Zeppelin played New York City in 1969 on their first tour.
Oh, wow.
That started out when they were supporting Vanilla Fudge.
Okay.
And they were second on the bill to I Am Butterfly. And when Zeppelin came on and were off, first of all, you were witnessing the history of music, of rock and roll changing before your eyes. It was like the changing of the guard.
Yeah.
And then I Am Butterfly attempted to come on, and they got pelted with garbage.
Really?
And Led Zeppelin literally caused pandemonium. I mean, it was like a new world of rock and roll, like just happened before your eyes.
Well, it was definitely different for its time.
Yeah, and it's amazing how Jimmy goes. Yeah, he went from being a session guy to finding his voice.
But I mean, this you got to understand, like most of the audience was probably young teenage guys.
Yeah,
and even then, the way the band was dressed and Robin Plant, there was this sexual energy. That you felt even as a guy.
Yeah,
it was not just the music. But I mean, they were English and they had the best clothes and the best hair. And Jimmy Page with his Rickenbacker transonic amplifiers and that Telecaster guitar that was painted with the dragon on it. And everything. I still remember it like I was there yesterday.
Wow.
Like I could still see, I remember what the clothes that they were wearing. I mean, did you see the movie?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you got to go see it. You're going to love it. It's great.
When does Blockbuster have it in stock?
I don't know, but a friend of mine told me you saw it on the IMAX theater. You said it was
that's a whole nother,
But I just saw it in a local movie theater. It was still great.
I have to see that.
I highly recommend it.
Dave, we have a date.
Great footage. Footage.
We'll go out and see
it. Really good interviews. I love John Paul Jones, so it was really great to hear him. Talk about his early life and his career in the studios doing session work, and I had some really good photos of them and Jimmy and Robert. And then they had like this one interview from before Bonham had died that they were able to, I guess, put together that made sense, where they had Bonham talking too, even though it was just the three of them in one place talking, together. But it was great. It was great.
Yeah,
go see it.
Yeah, it doesn't take too much urging for that. Yeah. We talk a lot on the show. We were just talking on last night's show about how curmudgeon-y Pete Townsend has become, the band who actually came up with the name for those guys.
What? Keith Moon.
Yeah, right. Keith Moon and Entwistle came up with the name. That's what we learned last night.
They have bizarre sense of humor, so it doesn't surprise me. But it's great. Well,
I love the backstories. Like Carmen Pisa was doing a little interview, and Bonham was enamored with his drum kit, and when Ludwig offered him a deal, Bonham just goes, "Just get me what he has. Just I want the same thing that guy has."
Yeah, and Bonham ended up just using the one kick drum,
right?
But there are a few photos around that I've seen. Must have been right when he got the drums, where he's got double kick drums.
Yeah, he wanted Carmen's kit.
So that's interesting.
So at the time, John Bonham had the largest bass drum that people used at that time in rock and roll. It was a 26-inch drum.
Yeah, 26.
When Dust got their deal, and we were given a check by Buddha Kama Sutra, and they said, "Go out and buy all the gear you want," I said to Mark, "Get a 28." And he did. He got a 28-inch kick drum.
That sounded like a cannon.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Especially in the 70s, where everything was sort of deadened, like,
oh yeah,
Ringo's playing with coats and things in the bass drum and towels.
My favorite drum sound of Ringo's is all the early stuff when you hear that thing cracking in the room. Man. I hate it. You know what? I lost interest in the Beatles after the White Album, basically.
Yeah, some people.
I think the White Album is incredible, but just production wise, the tea towel, the dead sound of everything, the lack of shit bouncing around in the rooms, and maybe even more sophistication of the recording technology, more tracks, more overdubbing. There's something about I like my music more raw, and more primal, and more. That's why I love old records. I still love mono. I cherish my mono 45s. I still love to listen. That's why I love old country, old Western swing, old rock and roll, 50s shit, early 60s stuff. That's why I love, like I'll listen to Little Steven's Underground Garage, because at least I'm going to hear really a lot of stuff that I really dig.
Show.
Yeah,
I mean, and there's some good new stuff there too, but I get to hear stuff that I grew up with, especially what's his name on Saturday and Sunday that does the English. I'm sorry, my memory.
Peter Noon.
No, but Little Steven's guy that does the Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
Chris. God.
I can't think of it either. I know who you're talking about.
He does all the English. Does all the English. He does an English show. It's like it's just plays. And he's always playing stuff. I go up to my Sirius radio thing, and I'm like, "What is that? What is that? I don't remember hearing that." And then I'm down on my computer looking for it on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, but there's something about the older stuff is more innocent. It's not tarnished. It's like what we were, when we were younger.
Yeah. We weren't as tarnished as today's youths.
No,
my mother's still worried about me all the time. When I got busted for pot the first time, my mother could never go to sleep again at night until she heard me come home.
Oh, and he didn't say Ute. He said youths. I was expecting to say Utes.
Oh, man.
I got busted by my mom, and I just laughed at her. She found my pot, and I just laughed.
Oh,
you know what happened one time? The night before a Dust show. This is before we got signed. We were going to play in Prospect Park, Brooklyn. And the night before, I went to see the Who at the Fillmore. And this was the show when the Fillmore caught on fire.
Oh, no.
Wow.
And Pete Townsend, or Roger Daltrey, one of them gave the fire marshal a kick in the nuts. Well, I went with a friend, and my friend was tripping, and he gave me Tuinals, and I was high on Tuinals.
Oh, dear.
And I came home, and I was really messed up, and my mother was very upset. and she had no idea what I did. And I told her I did drinking, but she wasn't even smart enough to know whether I smelled from alcohol or not.
Right.
It was like, oh my God,
Any big mishaps on stage in your career that you can
I've
think
had a
of
few.
that really stick out?
I've had a few alcoholic episodes.
Yeah.
We
Do you
don't
have
want to go
any?
there.
All right, that's fine. Do you have any?
I apologize to any of my past employers for any of those episodes. I always apologize.
Any harm you may have caused.
On their behalf, I accept your apology.
Yes, so do I.
Have you historically had any rituals before you play? Like the way sports players do, anything like that, or you just go out there and play?
Well, no, I get nervous as shit though before I play.
Yeah.
Still do. I still do.
Yeah.
I get very.
I suffer from that a little bit too.
I have very bad anxiety. And one of the things that I had to do, and it took me a long time to do it, was to come out and not be overplaying over too much, not to play too hard when you're right out of the gate.
Right.
Because I remember doing shows back in the day where my clothes would be very, I'd be wearing some sort of fashiony, stylistic, style and clothing, and the sleeves would be tight. And all of a sudden I'm playing, I'm just like, and everything is just swelling up and I'm losing circulation. And like, or your hands start to cramp and they want to go in and you're trying to, you need to, it's like, anyway, that used to happen to me a lot. And even now, if I don't play for a while, and I don't play as much as I used to, and, I'll play a little bit around the house, but I like to be working or being creative in the studio recording to play.
Mm-hmm.
Just playing bass for me around the house isn't the most interesting thing for me to do. It's not my creative outlet as a solo person.
Right.
That's why I love my computer and all my software, because I could really think much bigger.
I get it.
But the bass,
lately.
Like the bass for me, serves a role in a group and within a song and an arrangement, and it serves a purpose. And I try to do best serving the purpose as the bassist for whatever I'm doing, whether it's live or in the studio with somebody,
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate when someone lets me be more creative. Sometimes you can, sometimes they know what they want. Hey, if it's a good part, I don't mind playing it. I'm going to get credit for it anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't mind, a good idea is a good idea. But, most of the time, like for instance, I'm playing with the Yardbirds next week for a couple of weeks. I've been thinking about it. I've been listening to it, but I haven't really been playing along. And I really should tomorrow start to play through everything. And I'm going to try to do that. I just get so lazy. But, I'd rather sit around and watch Perry Mason episodes or something. But, and I'm giving my dog belly rubs. But I need to play through the stuff just to kind of know where everything's at and just certain things that require some sort of repetition, like the middle section of Dazed and Confused, well, when you got to do that for about 5 minutes straight at a fast tempo, you start to go, oh shit. It's like, so it's those kind of things. I'll put a metronome on and I'll just play. I'll play till I can't play anymore. I'll take a break, come back 20 minutes later, do it again till it hurts. Wait 20 minutes, do it again. Stuff like that helps, things like that for me, just to kind of.
You're going to the gym, basically.
It's like going to the gym. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. And then are you touring all over the country? Where are you guys going?
No, we're just doing. So what we're doing is we're doing a different concept. Jim McCarty is 80 now or 81 or something. And he's, he doesn't have the stamina to do the kind of shows that we've been doing since we were playing together.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we were really going out there and seriously kicking ass. And I loved it. It was great. But he's slowing down a little bit. And we also thought that we could try to do something different that might generate more business for us. So basically what happened was we started, we do these flower power cruises.
Right.
Yes.
And one of the cool acts that we saw on the flower power cruise was Peter Asher's show, where Peter Asher does a history of Peter Asher.
Okay.
Where he talks about his life and his involvement with the business from the beginnings when he lived at home and Paul McCartney lived in his house.
Wow.
And Paul McCartney was writing what would be hit songs in the bedroom next door and dating his sister. Right. And all this really cool stuff. And there would be visuals. And then there'd be and he had a great band. And then they would demonstrate and do musical examples of stuff. So basically, to make a long story short, the guy that helped Peter do this show over a period of time has now got involved in us.
Oh, perfect.
And we're going to try to do the same thing. So Jim has written the whole script about his life and about the Yardbirds with lots of interesting tidbits and details and stories.
Oh, people are going to.
And as it goes along, we're going to be demonstrating songs and different things. It'll probably go through a lot of changes. We're just going to start now. We have a couple of days of rehearsal to put it together. We don't have much time. And then we're just going to go out and do it. I mean, we'll be playing a bunch of songs. It's not going to be some kind of like lazy ass old men who can't play anymore. It's just that Jim needs to pace himself.
Right.
Yeah. So it's going to give Jim a break from constantly having to play drums.
Yeah, it's a win-win. I mean, people are going to want to hear that history and hear from his own voice and his own point of view. I think that's a great idea.
I think it could be interesting. We're all looking forward to trying it.
I saw probably 25, 30 years ago, I saw Billy Joel do that at Trenton State College when Trenton State College was Trenton State College. And he did exactly what you're talking about. And I've seen him in regular concert too, and that's great too.
He's great. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was really nice to hear the narrative and, to hear the thought behind, certain famous tunes that we've grown up enjoying and loving. So that sounds like a fabulous concept.
And I'm sure I'm going to learn stuff from it myself because, I mean, there's so many little bits and things and minutia, just stuff that may not necessarily, as much as I can be a fanatic or a geek about something, there's people that are way more than I would ever be about anything. And those are the people that like tell me stuff that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that, it's like, and then I'll do some research on it, but, so yeah, I think it's worthwhile giving it a shot. I think it's something that's going to grow and change. And I think also it can grow and change with the speaking aspect of it as well as the musical aspect of it. And it doesn't have to be the same.
Oh, it could evolve.
Yeah, it could evolve, why not? So, and we'll see what happens. But I think, I mean, we're definitely booking shows. I think we're going to try to do it again at next year and work it into the next Flower Power cruise as well. And maybe this time try to get down to do some more shows down in Florida. We used to play out in California and do West Coast runs, but with two people living in Europe and a band to have to feed and pay and travel and all the expenses now, and everything's going up and gas and
just getting
hotels, there. And it's just, it's really getting hard, and you can only, you can't get blood from a rock, man. Can only, what are you going to do? I mean,
we've had guests on from, England who would love to come on America and tour with us here and show us their stuff. It's impossible. It's too expensive. Just the visas and
I mean,
and the airfare and everything else.
Jim had to start working on getting his visa, I think, months ago, and he needed help doing it. And then our guitar player, lead singer John Iden, he lives in Germany,
right?
So he's got to deal with whatever he's got to deal with to get over, and I don't know. It is what it is. We live in a different world. I'm glad I lived when I did.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah. By the way, I would be remiss. I had two things on my bucket list for you tonight, and we covered one of them, Brother Louie. But 1988, bassist of the year.
Yeah.
That's a big fucking deal.
I beat out one of my favorite bass players, Marcus Miller, which is like, oh, come on, you got to be kidding me. That's why I would say, these polls don't mean nothing, man, because, I mean, you got a guy like Marcus, and it's like, I was very flattered, though. That was very nice. And, it's like, I didn't even know. I had a relative that called me up and goes, hey, man, did you see Rolling Stone magazine? I said, I don't even know. Well, last time I read it. And he goes, well, you won the poll. And I'm like, what poll? And I ended up buying it. And I'm like, holy shit. That was pretty cool. Yeah, that was great.
Cool. So the next step now is the Yardbirds thing, huh? Until then, you're gonna
hunker
down, I mean, your dog's belly, and start working
I'm very proud of my career. I'd like to be working. I like to keep working, but there's a part of me that I don't know. There's so much traveling, like I did the Happy Together tour with Godfrey last year, and it was really good. I had a really good time. The people were great. The music was fantastic because it's all the stuff that I grew up with, and now I'm getting to play these bass lines that like Carol Kay played, or Joe Osborne played on this one, or this cat from New York played on this one with Jay and the Americans, and I'm like, but I was on a bus with like 13 people, and I was like, well, if I could do it again, I'll do it again. But I don't know. I mean, it was fun.
I'm starting to get that. I'm 61 now. I'm starting to get that feeling every time I load the shit into my truck. I go, what am I doing?
Yeah, it was,
I'm happy just sitting home in this room and covering Who songs for 5 seconds and no longer than a minute. Because you get sniffed out.
And I was having problems sleeping on the bus a lot, and it was just like one of my jokes about it was every night we would take off to go wherever we were going because we would drive overnight, and you're in your bunk and you're like, and you realize, well, I don't know what state I'm in that I'm driving through at this point, but they're not fixing their roads. Their budget for their budget for road fixing is non-existent. And you'd be like this hours sometimes, and you hear the wheels going,
right,
over every seam, it was just like, I had a good time. It was good. It was really good people. And, but at this point, I'm doing a lot of stuff locally with people. I'm playing with some really nice folks that I know from here. I play with some younger guitar player, this cat named Greg Silver. And I still, I don't know if you know, I've been working with a singer-songwriter for 30 years named John Eddy, who's a...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm right near Asbury Park, so
right. So John and I've been playing with John for 30 years.
Yeah,
and I, I love John's music as a writer, and John has always kind of let me kind of do my thing, which is cool. I mean, I always try to get it the way he likes it, but he lets me be me.
Right.
And, he's always had
he's not saying downstrokes only. No.
No.
You don't have to turn your back.
No, one time I brought a Steinberger bass as a spare bass, and he turned around and said, I do not want you to ever use that bass on my stage. couldn't believe.
Yeah, he's too vintage for that shit.
He's too old school for that.
Well, he didn't even like the fact that my Ibanez looked like a Fender, but it didn't say Fender on it. You know?
Yeah,
but you know, he was funny that way. But he went, "Don't you ever use a bass on my stage?" And I just brought it as a spare because I was afraid I was going to break a string that night or something.
I saw him at the Stone Pony last summer. He was great.
Oh yeah, we're playing there in May. I think May or June. We're playing there.
Oh, maybe I hope they're off because
you should try to come.
I'm
down.
literally like 10 minutes.
And I think Steve Forbert is opening for us.
Yeah.
So so I still play with John, and then my really dear friend of mine, a guy that I became friends with when I moved down to this area, is my buddy David Orsikinen, who's the drummer for the Hooters. And we do projects together. So we have a project. He has a project called In the Pocket, ITP, and it's a constantly changing group of local Philly area musicians that come in and do stuff, and different people come and go. And so we do some shows every year with that. And just
even busy,
just trying to stay busy. I do session work from home for people, so I love recording if I can. So and doing bass, I have like tons of basses here, and people will have me do bass tracks for them, and I just sit down here in my pajamas, get up in the morning, have my coffee, and I'll just figure out what bass is right for this track. Well, let's see, this or this or whatever. And then a day later, at the end of the day, I got a track for somebody, and I get paid for it. I mean, it's that kind of stuff is good for creativity.
Yeah.
Because it's somebody maybe I haven't worked with before. They trust me. They want me to be creative, and yet it needs to be right for the song. It's got to be the right sound. It's got to be the right style. It's got to be the right bass. It's got to, sometimes I have to try things for a few times. It doesn't work. Let me try this again. Let me try. I got something up in the other bedroom I can pull out and see if that bass works. It's just, you just don't know, There's no hard and fast.
But you got to scratch that creative itch, you know what I mean?
I think you got to be open-minded about it.
Absolutely.
And I like to try shit. I like to have the luxury of trying shit. And when you're working under a clock or a budget or a time schedule, you can't always do that. So I don't know. It's all good. I'm in good health, and I like where I live now, and
keep at it. And I hope we get to see it at the Stone Pony. We'll have to plug that show.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just like that, fellas, it's 58 minutes.
It feels like 10 minutes. It always does.
So let's.
I really enjoyed talking to you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
A couple of Kenny's things. We got Kenny on Instagram. We're going to bring that little QR code up there.
Ooh, there you go.
Look at that.
We got.
I like that picture.
Kenny on. I used it for everything. Kenny on Facebook.
Yeah, that bass was given to me by G&L. And that's been my go-to bass now with me for a long time. Been using that pretty much all the time since I got it.
And wow. Kenny Aaronson, KennyAaronson.com. Is it Kenny_Aaronson? I forget what
you know what? I hardly ever go there. I don't even know.
Anyway, just scan that QR code. Yeah. And it'll bring you right there. And
look at
I think it's just KennyAaronson.com.
If you do a search, you'll find the man. He's playing the bass over the top of the fret.
It's the beautiful thing of having two A's. Like you're always first.
That's right. Well, you're number one with us, Kenny. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This was fantastic. Thank you.
Let's do it again, and hopefully I'll see you at the Stone Pony.
Oh, hell yeah. We will see you there.
Okay, be safe. Be healthy.
You too.
Let's end the show with a couple of our buddies, Jeremy and Ryan, who play bass and guitar with the great Ace Frehley. And add
great. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, what's up? Jeremy here.
Ryan here. And where are we, Jeremy?
We are at Mohegan Sun in Lucasville,
Connecticut.
And surrounding communities.
So we're here to tell you we're having a great show tonight. We're going to have a great show tonight.
Wait. Who do we play with?
Ace Frehley.
Play with Ace Frehley.
We do play with Ace Frehley. And we're here to tell you to go watch Guitar Tales with
Dave Cohen.
Our favorite show. We love it. We've been on there. It's a good time. Those guys are good. A lawyer
and a pharmacist.
And a pharmacist.
You know what that means? They got way more money than us.
They sure do. Don't be in a band. Be a pharmacist or a lawyer. We love you guys. Bye.